This 4K UHD disc of Spartacus looks amazing, and the reason for this is because it was shot in a large film format known as Super Technirama 70, so stay tuned to find out more. Spartacus underwent a major restoration in 1990 and was re-released to cinemas in 1991. I was lucky enough to see a 70mm print of that restoration at the Odeon Marble Arch in London on the 58-foot wide screen. It was a memorable experience, but the screen shown here is a slightly wider and more curvaceous D150 screen, and perhaps that's something we'll get onto in a future video. But Technorama is not really a 70mm format. It is a development of VistaVision, which uses 35mm passing through the camera gate horizontally, with an image width 8 sprockets wide. Technorama adds a 1.5 times squeeze, giving a final aspect ratio of 2.2 to 1, which matches that of 70mm, and hence the Super Technirama 70 name, and how Premiere Theatre release prints were delivered in the 70mm format. An additional squeeze is added during optical reduction and a little cropping top and bottom to match the 35mm CinemaScope release print ratio of 2.35 to 1. Technicolor were responsible for this film format, and the name was derived from combining Technicolor and Delrama, which was the name of the lens developed and supplied by the Old Delft company in Holland. It seems that Kirk Douglas was a fan of the Super Technirama process, as he also executive produced and starred in the 1958 Super Technirama epic The Vikings, which also starred Tony Curtis. There is an extra item on both the 4K and the Blu-ray disc titled Restoring Spartacus, and this explains that the original negative was used, but not entirely due to fade and damage. Fortunately, the 3 Technicolor matrices struck in 1960 were still available. These are first-generation safety copies for each of the 3 primary colours, and they are on black and white stock, which does not fade. These can be difficult to align, but the advent of computer image manipulation has resulted in near-perfect results. The scans of all the film elements were done in 6K, but all the subsequent work was done in 4K, and I really don't think that's quite high enough for the Super Technirama frame. It probably really needs to be about 20K to capture the superlative image that is available on that massive frame, but that's just not possible yet. The image on this 4K disc is sharp, very sharp, and the colours are beautiful. In fact, I'd say it's just like watching a 35mm film print, and that really is giving it high praise indeed. Now, there are going to be certain shots that you'll think that is out of focus. That was just the way it was in the old days before the advent of having a video camera, looking down the viewfinder and having instant replay or live action feed of what you're shooting. And there are some optical shots and some matte paintings where you might think that the picture looks a bit odd. Well, when you're shooting in a large film format such as Super Technirama, there really aren't many options for going to a bigger frame size to have additional quality, so that when the reduction process is carried out that you maintain the Super Technirama quality. It's just not going to happen. So I suppose they could have used 65mm film, or they could have used IMAX, but that wasn't available then. But of course these days they can do this because everything is done in a computer. There's no optical merging of the image, so that problem does not exist today. But 1960, when this film was made, this was as good as these effects could have been done. Sound is DTS X and has been engineered, in my opinion, to closely replicate the original 6-track magnetic 70mm. Now, it's not possible to do that exactly in the home market because that requires 5 channels at the front, 1 at the rear, but it does closely match the experience of watching this in 70mm, and it suits the film perfectly. It just wouldn't be right to have a modern sounding soundtrack, like for example the recent release of the Steven Spielberg Tom Cruise War of the Worlds, which has got fantastic sound for a 2005 film. It's been re-engineered on there into Dolby Atmos. But the DTS X sound on here does suit this film perfectly, and I think it complements the image on screen. So I'd say this release is highly recommended, and bearing in mind I'm shooting this on the 10th of January 2021, I got this for £12 from HMV and they're 3 for £36, so certainly a bargain in my opinion, and if they've still got this in stock, I'd say get onto their website and do yourself a favour right now. Another Super Technirama film that has been released on disc and I suggest is worth taking a look at is the 1964 production of Zulu. Now, I don't know how this film was mastered for the Blu-ray release, but I suspect it was from the 35mm negative because the aspect ratio is wider than Spartacus at 2.35 to 1 and comes with a more standard 2-channel stereo sound. Even so, the image is outstanding, as the 8-perf horizontal Technorama image ensured superior prints even when reduced to the 35mm gauge, and that image quality does shrink down and transfer over to this Blu-ray disc. I picked up this copy of Zulu for £6 from HMV, so another outstanding release that can be highly recommended not only for the price, but because just like Spartacus, it is a great film. So at the moment I'm aware that a lot of the people I follow and subscribe to on YouTube are doing their picks of 2020. Well, I'm not going to do a complete video on something like that. It just really wouldn't suit my format. But what I will say is I'm going to pick out what I think is the best film that I saw in 2020 for the first time. And you don't have to be a car fanatic to enjoy this one. But Le Mans 66, I think that combines a great story. It's a true story and is actually very accurate in this. It's got great action, a great soundtrack, and probably best of all for 4K fans, this is one of the best images I've seen on a 4K disc. So I highly recommend that one. But probably a bit of a sleeper, this one, because it came out in February 2020, so just as the pandemic really killed everything. And I don't think it's got a 4K release, but I just stumbled across this on HMV's website. It's The Call of the Wild with Harrison Ford. And my wife and I watched this, my brothers watched it, my parents have watched it, we all think it's fabulous. Now there's one proviso I'll say, the opening sequence with the dog in it, it's frighteningly obvious that you're not looking at a real dog, but if you can get past that and you just accept that there was no way they could get a live dog to do what this dog does, this is a wonderfully enjoyable film. So again, I think we got that for something like £10 from HMV, it might have been even less, so an amazing bargain, and best of all, that is better than most of the 4K discs I've seen for image quality, so really highly recommended. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like and perhaps consider subscribing so I'll be encouraged to carry on doing future content like this. Until the next time, bye bye for now.